Hey, everybody, welcome to a special edition of the Curt Schilling Baseball Show. We're going to do a playoff preview, kind of a playoff pitching preview, because as biased as I am, that's one of the places I'm very biased, and that I think you go as far as your starting pitching can take you in the postseason. And obviously your bullpen, but we're going to take a peek at the contenders. We're not even going to look at the matchups. We're just going to take them team by team from a should you expect your team? Will you be surprised by your team, or there's no chance your team's going to do it? Perspective. Everybody has a chance. Obviously, that's the worst cliche in the world. But I think some teams are much better positioned than others. And we'll probably, you know what, I'm going to do it in what is baseball chronological order. We'll start with the American League up top at the East, then the Central West, and then head over to the National League. And probably the easiest place to start, and going back to episode 1, the I Told You So team, Bill, the Orioles. We're past the shock point. They had the year they had because they're a good team. They're a good young team. They're a star-studded team. They're and this narrative that I'm about to give, it has to do with the postseason, is centered on and focused on guys that make hitters swing and miss, and I call it swing and miss pitching. You have to have it in October. Go back to the 90s and the Braves winning, I think, 14 straight division titles and one World Series, having trouble in the postseason. And it was because of that lack of. They didn't have swing and miss pitching. They had John Schmaltz, whose career numbers in October are legendary. And then they had two other Hall of Famers in Glavine and Maddox, whose numbers in October weren't. For all the reasons that I'm getting ready to say. In October, it's different. In October, hitters are different, pitchers are different. If you can't make guys swing and miss enough in October, you generally don't have a lot of consistent success. Case in point, Clayton Kershaw is a first ballot Hall of Famer. His numbers are off the charts. And he will be in on the first ballot, hopefully with 100% of the vote. And his playoff numbers are 12-12 with a 4.2. Just because you can make players swing and miss doesn't mean you can do it in October. It's a different game. Everybody's different. Hitters are so markedly different in their approach and their the way at bats play out. So, but we'll start with the Orioles. If and when they make it, or if and when they get past the first round, which they will because they'll have the bye, they'll open up with a fresh rotation. And my thoughts would be it probably will go Rodriguez, Bradish 1-2. Rodriguez is your ace. He's your horse. He's your first guy. He's your play-in guy if you had to play in for a game, right? He's a guy that is averaging almost 10 punch outs per 9. And, his 4 something ERA, 4.5 ERA is much more of a byproduct of his early struggles than it is of his late dominance. He's pitching the way I think people expected it to. Again, if you go back to episode 1 or 2 of this show this year in spring training, he was a name on the tip of my tongue as a possible horse and a stud. He's rounding into form. I've seen him pitch down the stretch enough to think that this guy's got the mentality to put up zeros in October. So if you're the Orioles, you're feeling good about it. The bullpen notes here. Bautista threw out the mound on Tuesday of last week. There's been more throwing. I don't even imagine that you bring him right off the DL and throw him onto a postseason roster. He could be. Yanier Cano was 8 of 14 in save opportunities with a 2.13. A little bit misleading, but they've got pitching. I don't know that they have enough hitting to outscore bad pitching, but they're going to need Grayson to step up and be that October ace, and probably Bradish or Kramer behind him would be a 3-game set in the best of 5. Those are the 3 guys I think you might see first out. Tampa is interesting for a lot of reasons. Rasmussen and McClanahan are both gone. Glasnow will be your game 1 guy with Elfin behind him. Both of them prevent base runners, which is a big thing. But both of them are sporting ERAs north of 3.5, which is a little troublesome. Again, that doesn't really translate as much as the whip and the strikeouts per 9, but Glasnow and Elfin give them a chance in a 5-game series to be up 2-0. And then Bradley or Little becomes their third starter if they need him, which in a 3-game series or 5-game series you will. Bradley's a swing and miss guy, but a lot of contact also and command issues with a 5.5 ERA. Little manages base runners a little better, but relies much more on defense to get outs. So it'll be interesting to see. As a staff, they were ranked first in WHIP, which is an October number. That's a big one, right? That's all about command in the strike zone. So, if Elfin comes through and Glasnow's the ace, that Tampa has a chance to move on.
Yeah, and their pen is deep too.
Their pen
they've got a bunch of guys who strike people out and are hitting.
And you know what though, Bill? That's I think that's across the board for these teams. That basically baseball is filled with pens of guys. The problem is that it's not filled with a pen full of pitchers.
They're throwers
of the world. And that's I think if you pay attention, you'll see more hard contact late in the game when contact is made, because these guys again are throwing. They're not pitching. Very few of them are pitching. And I think we had talked about this early in the year, Bill, about possibly seeing 3 teams from one division in playoffs. And with the East, that's probably not as surprising. But the team that I don't want to say I'd be worried about, but the team, if I'm in the American League, I really wouldn't want to see would be a Gausman-led Blue Jay club who can hit, obviously, has a deep lineup. They've got Romano at the back end. They've got a deep bullpen, but you've got Gausman and Kikuchi, who are my 1-2s. I know Bassett. I'd be interested to see what Bassett's numbers translate to in October. ERA close to 4, not a strikeout per inning guy. Up there, but not a strikeout per inning guy. And then or Berrios. Those are the 2 guys that I think in a 5-game series you'd see Gausman, Kikuchi, and then you'd see Bassett or Berrios as the 3, with the other guy being kind of a swing man, emergency starter kind of thing. Their bullpen, again, Romano 36 of 40, a lot of hard throwers, but everybody's bullpen is going to be full of hard throwers this year. I'll tell you what, the team that I wouldn't go to sleep on for this no other reason than these guys strike out a lot of players is the Twins. Locked in as the 3 guys, so they're not going to get the bye. But with Lopez, Ryan, Gray, and Over, they've got 4 guys in a 7-game series. I wouldn't do 4 guys in a 7-game series, probably. I would go 3 with my 1 on short rest. I don't see that happening, but Lopez gets the ball for game 1, obviously, and easily. And then you've got Gray and Ryan. Although I go Ryan and then Gray, but Sonny Gray will probably be Bald. I think didn't Baldelli already say that?
Yeah, he did. He said Lopez and Gray 1-2.
Yeah, and then you got Ryan for 3.
And I think Bailey Ober turns into your Bronson Arroyo. Important innings when you need them.
Right. A starter who fails in the second, which hopefully none of those do.
Right.
Same thing, pen full of hard throwers. My issue with the Minnesota, if I'm a fan, is they're not going to hit their way into the playoffs or deep. They're going to have to pitch. So if Lopez and Gray are who we think they are, then that could be a very interesting situation in Minnesota. Then down in the West, you've got the Rangers, who, well, the deadline turned out to be what they hoped it would. And you're going to go. I'm going to assume that Montgomery is going to get the ball early in the series. The big question in Texas was that, last Monday, Gray leaves his start with a sore wrist. Is he part of that playoff series? You've got Evaldi and Haney who are going to be. So Montgomery, Gray, Eovaldi, and Haney are going to be the 4 guys. And I'm assuming if they go into a 7-gamer, they get to a 7-game series, that would be how they'd line them up. I'm not really sure in what order that happens. I'm going to assume it's Montgomery or Eovaldi getting the ball game 1. You've got Aroldis Chapman throwing 115 still in the bullpen, but he's not the guy he used to be. He doesn't have a lot of command, so you're not going to want to expose him deep in high leverage situations. And for anybody that's a Cub fan, you can remember him closing in a big situation before. So it'll be interesting to see how that rotation in Texas plays out. Not a lot of swing and miss pitching on that staff team. That I think that's going to have to hit their way somewhere in October. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see. I don't know that we thought that we would be talking about this team sneaking in. Houston limped in across the finish line in every way possible. This isn't the Houston Astros of your father's days. It's an older Justin Verlander who gets less, swings and misses than he used to. I think you're talking game 1. You're looking at Valdez probably for sure. Verlander, Javier, Brown in France as starters. Brown is the strikeout guy in that group, but he's also sporting a 5+ ERA. France is wild. Doesn't strike enough guys out. And then, Javier, to me, is the third guy in that mix. You're talking Valdez, Verlander, Javier. Another team, I don't know that they're going to be able to hit their way past their pitching. Their pitching is going to have to close. Presley's 30 of 36 at the back end. Depth in the pen, they can throw that hard. Again, everybody can. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't have them at the end anyway. Coming out of that's the American League, and the way it posits itself, I'm gonna have to stick with my preseason suggestion, Bill. I think Baltimore comes out of the American League playoffs.
That would be a great surprise for a team that hasn't sniffed the playoffs in a while.
Right. Yeah. That they're in is kind of surprising. That there might be a favorite is even probably more.
Yeah.
We moved to the National League, and I got to say, I thought 6 weeks ago this was a no-brainer. I said it multiple times. How does anybody beat Atlanta in a 7-game series? Well, maybe it's in very many ways it's like an old saying. The only team that can beat you is yourself. Atlanta's been hurt after Strider. I have no idea what's going to happen with this bullpen. You've got your 1 in Strider. He's your game 1 guy. He's your game 7 guy. And then, Elder is healthy, but I'm not sure that, that's the answer. The guy that, Max Fried's blister issues are of concern, but that's your 1A, right? I mean, Strider and Fried are 1A. Kyle Wright, I wouldn't have him anywhere near a mound in October with the physical stuff. But that's what we're looking at from Atlanta. To me, is Strider and then Fried, and then you'd probably see Elder in a 3, and I would come back with Strider in 4. Their bullpen will be fine. Big power arms. This is the one team of all the teams in the postseason. This is, to me, the only team that can hit their way into a World Series. And probably the one team that probably doesn't have to. Because the next team we talk about, I think, is going to have to hit their way into the World Series, and that's the Dodgers. They're going to go into the postseason. Walker Buehler will not be around. I think it's a wise decision. Kershaw, Lynn, Miller, and Gonsolin are the guys you talk about name-wise. Clayton Kershaw is the first ballot Hall of Famer, no doubt. Still punching out over a player an inning at a 2.42 ERA this year. But he's a 12-12 guy in October. 12-12 with a 4. I don't know if he's figured out the October thing because his success has been more recent than it was. He struggled early in his career, but Bill, I think that if the Dodgers make it, like he's pitching your game one. I mean, not if they make it, but I think he's pitching your game one.
Yes.
And I don't know that. And again, Hall of Famer on and off the field. I'm not so sure that that's a mail it in day.
So the question I have for you is Clayton Kershaw, like you said, first ballot. What changes in October? Is it something in his head?
Well, the hitters change in October.
And the hitters change, okay.
The hitters change and the pitchers have to adjust. There's less room for error. You have to be more perfect. The analogy I use is that every at bat in October is, from a hitter's perspective, is bottom of the ninth, tying run on third. That's the focus of every. I know people would like to believe that's all the time, but it's not. It's just mentally, it's impossible to be that intense every at bat. But in October, it's not. Most guys at the plate, they're focused, and you get fewer swings and misses. You get fewer no giveaways, no gimme at bats. Every at bat demands perfection, and some guys don't adjust well to that. Some guys, it takes time to adjust to that. Some guys never do. But the key is being able to make people swing and miss in October, because we all know, and sabermetrics proves, when you put the ball in play, you clearly have a better chance of getting on than when you don't. And you have to rely on defense and all things go with it. Now, that being said, LA's got some talented gloves behind them, but I think that LA is probably another team. If they get to the World Series, it'll be because they're swinging the bats, and one of their pitchers has suddenly gone off in October. Wouldn't be surprised if it was Clayton Kershaw. One of the guys, a couple of guys to be leery of. I know I love Lance Lynn because Lance Lynn is a fastball pitcher, but Lance Lynn is not the swing and miss guy he used to be, and that looks to be an issue in October. And then the next team we're going to talk about is the dark horse, I think, in the National League, in the sense that I don't think anybody would be pulling them off in a bracket. But the Milwaukee Brewers can run Burns and Peralta out, and Woodruff is my three. They've got a legit chance. They have the staff that if you're looking for long shot money betting, that's the team I would put it on. With Devin Williams closing, they've got three starters who can go out there and punch out 13 guys in a game in October, in Burns and Woodruff and Peralta. Excuse me. I don't think you see Miley anywhere near it unless they go to a 4.
And all three of those guys have great whips.
Yeah.
They're
all three strikeout.
Yeah.
Woodruff is what, 0.82. I mean, so you've got a 1, a 1A, and literally a 1B. I mean, if you're running Peralta as your third guy, you're feeling pretty good about it. But that's the one team. But I also look at that team offensively and say, if a team's going to have to get a team that would have to pitch their way there, absolutely would be Milwaukee. But I also think they have the arms to do it. And then moving on to Philly, my old home. I said it early in the year, and I think it's a statement of fact. Any series that you have a chance to run a Zach Wheeler and an Aaron Nola out in 1 and 2, you have a chance to be up 2-0. I don't know what their third start. I'm sure Walker ends up being their third guy. You got Kimbrel at the back end, but I got to feel optimistic if I'm a Phillies fan, because of those two guys at the front end of my rotation. That's the reason I'm most optimistic. Yes, they can hit, and yes, I think Bryce Harper has proven himself to like October. But Wheeler and Nola are the things that I hang my hat on in Philadelphia.
I'm not convinced that Walker is the 3.
Right.
The kids, Suarez and Sanchez, both in the second half of the year have pitched very well.
Yeah. And
it could be one of those two in the 3 spot.
Well, I think if you do that, you end up going with Sanchez, the guy with the better command. What, a 1.06 whip? I mean, that's that's a guy who commands the ball in the strike zone and has power stuff. So, yeah. So, but you've got four names you're possibly contemplating for your rotation in a positive manner, whereas other teams, they don't get past one or two.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which brings us to Arizona. Zach Gallen's your one. He pitches your game one, and for all the right reasons. Probably Merrill Kelly. Not probably. Merrill Kelly's your 1A over there. And then, it becomes a concern.
Yeah. You get down into the D level.
Yeah. Nelson, Fat, and Davies, all three of those guys with horrific peripheral numbers. Yeah, we'll see. Arizona, I think, has got the longest road to hoe. But they also probably have, in Corbin Carroll, one of the most exciting players in the game to watch. So be interesting to see him get his first exposure to the bright lights of October. I'm guessing his game will just get elevated. He's got that kind of makeup. Let's talk about the team that if I'm in the playoffs and I'm looking at the potential matchups, the one that's probably scares me the most from a, oh my God, they could actually beat us perspective is the Marlins. You've got, even with Alcantara out, by the way, Alcantara is out with his UCL sprain. You've got Luzardo, you've got Garrett, Perez, and Cabrera. Each one of these guys, well, with the exception of Garrett, 10 plus Ks per nine. All these guys swing and miss pitchers. Young on the younger side. This is where you look to your catching in the postseason. When you're talking about going in with a young staff, you need catching that can guide a young staff through a playoff series. And the Marlins I don't think there's any chance they hit their way anywhere. They're going to have to pitch and pitch a lot. So at the end of the day, when I look at it, I see the Orioles coming out of the American League, and I'm gonna go off the reservation here against what I've said all year, because I think the Brewers pitching is enough of a question mark. I'm going to go with an Orioles-Phillies World Series, and I'm going to make a backup pick and say if it's not Orioles-Phillies, it will be Orioles and the Brewers in the World Series. I think the Dodgers and the Braves are both going to get upset, and they're going to get upset because somebody's young pitching is going to step up and do the things that they do. So I'll say now,
you could get some odds on that.
I'm going Orioles, Phillies, with the Orioles winning the World Series, and my wife's preseason futures bet cashing in for umpteen thousands of dollars as my prediction. So, and then Grayson Rodriguez is he's going to be the ace of the staff for the Orioles, but it's going to be Orioles, Phillies, and then it'll be the Orioles winning it with Adley Rutschman winning the World Series MVP. That's my prediction. So there you have it. All right. And I look forward to catching up. We may be jumping in with some spot updates during the playoffs. We'll have our normal shows. But this should be a fun postseason. A lot of young superstars to watch in October. So grab a beer, sit down, relax, enjoy it, because there's a lot of baseball to be played and all of it matters.